Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Justin Young. He is Josh Tec. Welcome to the Fast Break. And this week, we're getting into a very, very busy week of a commitment catch-up. A lot of guys to talk about. We're going to dive into 6 or 7 guys today on the commitment catch-up. We're going to try to do this every single Monday right here on Hoop Scene TV, on YouTube, on social media platforms, wherever you find us. We want to go through it because recruiting season is here, Josh. I mean, it is here. It's fast and furious. Guys are taking visits. Guys are making decisions, and so we'll certainly get into it. So
I feel like this process is getting earlier. Like every commitments are happening earlier and earlier now.
They are, and I think that's a great sign, given what we've seen with the transfer portal and so many guys kind of taking up those roster spots. It's been good to see. Like, I feel like this past week was the most intentional week of high school recruiting that I've seen literally the entire calendar year. With Cooper Flagg moving up, and we're going to talk about that on our long show a little bit later today on a different pod. Him going up to 2024 class, but I feel like this week we really started to see some like real cornerstones of some recruiting classes being put into place, and then furthermore, like official visits coming up and different things that are happening. So it's good to see like this is kind of coming into focus for a lot of high school guys kind of getting into it. But we talked about Cooper Flagg moving up, and one of the guys who was up there was Flory Bidunga. We're going to talk about his commitment. We're also going to go through Notre Dame had a really good week. Cam Scott, a guy that we know really, really well, had a big week, and some really important non-Power 5 conference, whatever that means anymore. I don't even know what a Power 5 conference school is anymore. But we're going to talk about that. And, of course, Peyton Marshall made his decision. He's going to stay in the ACC, so we're going to dive into all that. But let's start at the top. Let's start with Flory Bidunga. It's going to Kansas. I feel like if there's a good big guy in the country, Kansas is going to be a player. And, I mean, how can you not love, if you're a Kansas Jayhawk fan, you're not loving Monday today after a great weekend where he committed to the Jayhawks?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, like you said, every time there's a big man out there that's pretty elite, and Flory Bidunga is that Kansas is always going to be a player. And they're always, probably going to win that battle. Bill Self just has a proven track record of succeeding with big guys, like traditional big guys. He just knows how to use them. He knows how to put them in positions to be successful. And I think Flory is going to thrive in that system.
I think so, too. I mean, I think you can plug Flory Bidunga probably in any system. He's going to be fine. But I think there's, like you said, there's decades worth of proven history of guys at that position that are going to be really, really good. And, as much as he's going to be like an unbelievable playing that dunker spot, playing in the middle, throwing it up at the rim, I think defensively he actually adds a level of intimidation that we don't see in that conference with these new teams coming in and like really kind of setting the tone for like, all right, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to go through me at the rim. So with all those great guards in that league and the new league that's going to be before us, I think his presence inside certainly, shifts the mentality of a lot of guys that want to attack the basket. And quite frankly, I can't wait to watch him for the Jayhawks. I think, to me, he's got some real superstar potential that if you're like a casual sports fan, you'd probably want to stop and like, hey, I heard that Kansas has this unbelievable big guy, and I want to go watch him. He's got that type of power, I think.
Yeah, he's going to be the guy that kind of just puts on a show in the Big 12. Like, he'll win them games. Bill Self will figure out the right way to scheme for him specifically. And it's just, I just think that this marriage is it's perfect. And it's good for the Jayhawks because they beat out Duke, who jumped in pretty late. I believe it was at the Pangos All-American camp is when Duke was kind of starting to throw their hat into the ring. So they jumped in late, but to hold off Duke and John Shire, the recruiting machine that he is pretty impressive. So that portends well for Bill Self and the Jayhawks.
I like my chances with Bill Self, too. I think that guy is a lottery pick maker for sure.
Oh, for sure.
I've seen that. How was he at Elite 24, by the way? You spent some time there at their practices. I know he was a big talking point there. What did you like from him there?
I mean, it's just go through all the summer's stories from Pangos All-American camp, NBPA Top 100 camp, whatever. Flory was just being Flory. I mean, big dunks and just really impressive athleticism, explosiveness, good defense, all of the Flory Bidunga type of things. His story is pretty expansive on hoopscene.com. So just go to Flory's profile and you'll see I wrote about him from Elite 24. I wrote about him from all these other camps. So I think you can just go get the summary there.
I wonder how much of the film that they had for Andrew Wiggins they're going to pull out for Bidunga just in that dunker spot. Not so much like he didn't do a ton of perimeter stuff. I think it was at Kansas, not as much as we see him doing now in the NBA. But man, Andrew Wiggins at one point was our number one player in the nation across the board, and was certainly a fun guy to watch there in Lawrence when he was there for the one season. But actually, the more I watch him, Flory, the more I'm having some flashbacks of Blake Griffin, honestly, like that sort of explosion and that sort of like just like holy crap, like just an absolute physical freak show that actually made you really think twice about some stuff. So we'll see. Blake Griffin obviously is one of the best college players we've seen in the last 25 years. So I'm not sure if that's what Flory Bidunga is, but nevertheless, very, very good commitment. Let's keep it moving. Cam Scott headed to Texas. Big commitment for Rodney Terry and for his staff. Yeah. A guy that, speaking of Peyton All-American camp, Cam Scott, I think probably was his apex mountain, if you will, for his basketball. But like we've seen, like he's got all the tools to be a legitimate pro prospect. And Texas, as they start to rebuild things, what do you think of this commitment, and what's the long-term projection here for this marriage?
Well, I guess let's start with the last part of that. The long-term projection, like you said, is NBA, because I think when Cam Scott is at his best, you see that like, wow, this guy can really thrive in the league because, he's a bigger guard or, an appropriately sized wing who can do a lot as far as athleticism, as far as like burst and speed. And then he can, space the floor. He's a pretty good passer as well. So he does a lot well on the perimeter. And I think for Texas, this is a really good pickup because in my head, I was just like, oh, Cam Scott's going to South Carolina because he's from the area and all that. It just seemed like a no-brainer that he was going to go there. But to go to Texas, that's pretty impressive for Rodney Terry. I mean, I know he's always been, heralded as a pretty good recruiter. He helped, under the Chris Beard staff, get a lot of those guys. They had a really good season last year. So I think they're just riding that momentum. I think Cam Scott could really thrive there because that Texas program, as long as I can remember, has really thrived with like athletic kind of wings. And I think Cam Scott can really fit that mold well for them.
Yeah, no question. Where do you think he helps right away as a freshman?
I think as a shooter, honestly. I think it's like at this point he's a little bit he's not as consistent. I wouldn't say he's like a super knockdown shooter, but I think he can come in and hit shots for them, and then also just kind of help make some athletic plays, provide some athleticism. He might be a guy that has to like really bloom in his sophomore year. He's one of those guys I could see it making a sophomore jump, but I think early on he can hit shots and just kind of get some buckets for them. Sure.
Well, we're happy for him. Happy for Texas. It's a really good fit. And like you said, I think when we look I don't think out of area recruiting is as uncommon as it once was. But this is one, like to your point, from Lexington, South Carolina to Austin, Texas is not a pipeline that we've seen over the years. And certainly one that when we look at this class, going out of region, if you want to call it that, is one of the more important ones, I think, that we see in this class for sure. Peyton Marshall was once committed to Auburn, a guy that you've seen quite a bit over at Kell High School. His teammate C.J. Brown headed to South Florida. We talked about him last week on the commitment catch-up. So now it's Peyton Marshall's turn. Made his big decision. He's going to go play for Dennis Gates at the University of Missouri. And quite frankly, I've got to wonder. Oh, I'm totally drawing a blank. This is the case of the Mondays here. Kobe Brown. I was totally drawing a blank. Kobe Brown, how much film that they showed Peyton Marshall and said, hey, listen, this is what Kobe Brown was when he started here. We see a future for you. I'm not saying that their games are similar at all, but big, strong, real physical presences down low. Peyton Marshall certainly is a guy that we know once he hits that strength and conditioning program, it's going to be all she wrote. But I want to get your thoughts on that. You've seen Peyton Marshall probably since his freshman year. What do you like about this commitment? Where do you think he helps Missouri right away?
Well, I think it's what I love most about it is just he's such a unique player. I mean, he's 7 foot, probably like 300-ish pounds or so. He is the immovable object, right? Sure. When he gets the ball around the basket, nobody's stopping him. I don't even think a guy like Flory Bidunga is stopping him if he gets the ball around the basket. I think what I like about this, long term, is his ability to kind of I believe in that staff as far as their development goes, and I think they can kind of further his conditioning and further get him into a position where he can do things away from the basket a little bit better than he can right now, as far as catching it from the elbow and then creating or something like that. Sure. So I think long term, there's still so much upside to work on, but immediately he's just going to be that force around the basket that's, just grab the ball, go up, dunk the ball. You can't stop it.
Well, we talked about last week too with Marcus Allen, who's going to Missouri. I think Peyton Marshall's commitment makes Marcus Allen even more valuable. Yeah, because you can really put him in a lot of really fun places on the defensive end where you can do a lot of switching with him. Now you give Marcus Allen a lot of one-on-one situations because Peyton commands so much on the offensive end, a lot of doubles. a lot of help side stuff there. So I'm really curious to see how Marcus Allen, again, what we talked about with Flory in that dunker position, I think that position really now for big guys, if you can't go play above the rim on a oop or some sort of, really close proximity basket, then I don't know how much you're going to see the floor. I think that's where Marcus Allen now becomes very valuable when you got a guy like Peyton Marshall just kind of, setting up a foundation, drawing a lot of defenders in, makes him very, very valuable. So really like that front court that they're building there in Columbia for the Missouri Tigers. So Peyton Marshall off the board to Mizzou. Really good week for Notre Dame, Josh. Really, really good week. They picked up a big commitment from Garrett Sundra out of Paul VI, a guy that you've seen quite a bit on the high school season. And then they added a guy that we like a lot in Sir Mohammed, and two guys that I think when we look in this world of transfer basketball roster additions, that you've got to have guys like these two guys. I think they are what I like to call sustainable recruits, guys that will stick around for a long time. Yeah. And on top of that, they'll win you a lot of games. And as they're starting to build a new culture there in Notre Dame, what do you think of these two commitments, and how do they blend well to what Notre Dame's trying to do here moving forward?
Well, with that staff that was at Penn State, they kind of had like I don't know if positionless is the right word, but they kind of had like everybody was skilled essentially.
Sure.
Going back to past Notre Dame teams, everybody was skilled. And I think with these two guys, Garrett Sundra, very skilled big, Sir Mohammed, very skilled wing guard, kind of hybrid tweener position. I think like that's going to portend well for this program. It's going to really continue what we've seen out of Notre Dame in the past. I got to see Garrett Sundra a lot during the high school season, like you said, and then I got to see Sir Mohammed just recently at the Elite 24, and he was really impressive as a playmaking wing. He can really pass the ball. I think if you go back to Bob Gibbons a few years ago, that was the first thing I noticed about him. I was like, man, this guy can really pass the ball from the wing. 6'6" kind of guy. Really great vision. And at Elite 24 on the second day, the scrimmage day, he was really hitting a lot of shots. So I think if Sir Mohammed can keep up that shot making, he's going to be a really valuable piece. And for Garrett Sundra, like I said, 6'9", 6'10", kind of a little bit of a late blooming prospect. He's a really, really skilled forward. So I think that late bloomer can kind of continue into his college career, where his development is still far from over.
Yeah. I think Sir Mohammed has a chance to be an all-league defensive player too in the ACC. I think he's got such great potential as an all-league defender because of that interchangeability that we were talking about. Obviously, the son of Nazir Muhammad, a guy that really made his career on the defensive end as well. Different style of game, no doubt about it, but really good commitment. I thought his commitment was interesting too, because I thought he had a lot of schools from a lot of different levels looking at him. And that were in the mix, like high academic kid, great locker room kid, great high character guy. Really kind of fits the profile for what Notre Dame is trying to do moving forward.
Yeah. So, they fit well. That duo just fits Notre Dame. Like it's like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, no question about it. And Garrett Sundra again, man. Listen, in the era that we're in basketball, big guys are really traditional. Big guys are tough to find. So I like Garrett Sundra as a guy, like I always say, as a junior and senior in college. How is he going to be? And I like Garrett Sundra a lot as a junior and senior in college because he has traditional 5-man and 4-man position abilities. But I do think he can step out and shoot, and I think he's going to get stronger.
He could be like for a recent Notre Dame, he could be like a Nate Laszewski kind of guy, like big guy that could stretch the floor, do a lot of skill work.
That all day. Take it all day. I'd take that all day on my team. No question. Couple I don't know what the verbiage is anymore, like non-Power 5. We'll keep it in that realm for now. Utah State out here in the West is a program that's been a masterpiece of what it means to be a non-Power 5 basketball program for decades.
Oh yeah.
And they've added another guy, and I'm going to go out on the record and say this. I think Utah State landed the most significant sleeper in the West this year, and a guy named Kase Wynott from a very small town in Idaho. He lives on the reservation, plays res ball. So I watched a ton. Again, we've talked about my. You're
the Idaho whisperer.
I love it. I love Idaho basketball, and I'm watching a ton of film during the season, and I'm watching this kid named Kase Wynott, and he's just knocking down shots. Now the competition they're playing was hard to like really get a gauge as to how good he can be, because the competition, not to kill them, wasn't the best competition.
Sure.
But technique was there, shot making ability was there, athleticism was there, size was there. And I remember in the springtime, seeing Andy Hill, an assistant coach at Utah State, and I kind of whispered him like, "Hey, have you seen this kid Case Wynott from Idaho. And he kind of looked at me like, how do you know about this guy? And I watched him a ton. I watched 6 or 7 full games of him, and I was really, really intrigued by him. You can go back and look at his profile. I wrote about him quite a bit. And so it's interesting. Andy Hill now is at Utah State and was a huge part of landing that commitment for Utah State. I really like this commitment a lot. I think he's going to be a guy that, no one's going to pay attention to now. But I'm telling you, if you're watching late night basketball or whatever league that Utah State's going to be in moving forward, I think he's going to be a player that you're like, holy crap, this guy can absolutely go and be a guy that I think plays a lot of minutes and be a really imperfect type of player for that new staff, Danny Sprinkle, that they're building there in Logan moving forward. So excited to see what that is. Staying on that same realm of non-Power 5, Wofford got a big commitment this weekend from a guy in Atlanta, Luke Flynn, a guy that you've seen quite a bit. What can you tell Terrier fans about him, and why should they be excited about him?
Well, he kind of, if you go back to the days of even Mike Young, he fits so many of those Wofford kind of point guards, very skilled, very high IQ, just knows how to play the game. He could really, really shoot the cover off the ball too. I think Luke Flynn is if you were to have asked me a couple years ago where like a good school for him would be, I probably would have been like, off the top of my head, I probably would have said Wofford in the top 5. You know what I'm saying? So this fit feels so perfect. He feels like a Wofford point guard. He's going to have a really good career there. I think this is a really great pickup for the Terriers.
Dwight Perry, a guy that was on Mike Young's staff, a guy that knows that area very, very well. Really the 85 corridor, if you will, a corridor that's treated Wofford very, very well over the last couple of years. So it's good to see him and his staff kind of stay into what they know to be true. So, man, busy week. I have a feeling every Monday is going to be like this, Josh. We're going to have a lot of commitments to go through. Yeah. Again, I think we saw a superstar going to Kansas and Flory Bidunga. Really like the sustainability for Notre Dame. And some guys really, again, like I said, I think Case Wynott is a guy that will be one of the most important sleeper commitments there is in the class of 2024. So a lot to do. Let us know in the comments below what you like the best commitment of last week. If there's any commitments that you know of coming up that we should keep our eyes on, also drop in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe right here on Hoop Scene TV, and we'll see you next Monday for the commitment catch-up. Thanks, Josh.